Many today say that we are in the midst of a meaning crisis. The idea is that there's a critical mass of people experiencing existential anguish. They may feel like they are not living well, they may not know who they are in a deep sense, and may question whether their life is worth living at all. The French philosopher Albert Camus said that the only philosophical issue is the question of suicide. That is, what makes a life worth living? Behind the meaning crisis is the idea that too many people do not have a good answer to that philosophical question. But I think that framing is mistaken. It's an interesting question whether the meaning crisis reveals something positive or negative about a society. If I bring to mind someone who has never experienced existential angst, it's not clear to me that I bring to mind someone who is living well. Every hero in every good story has moments of extreme doubt and existential anguish. They wonder whether they are the right person, whether they are on the right quest, or whether they have what it takes to do what they need to do. Yet they are still the hero in all of these stories. This suggests that there is a positive upside, at least in an individual's life, to a crisis of meaning. The positive aspect of existential angst is just that it forces one to ask the question, what is it to live well? Those of us who are fortunate enough to be able to answer that question at all, as opposed to being concerned about shelter or survival or what have you, should be shocked out of any sense of mediocre complacency. This isn't to say that the question is pleasurable to ask or answer. Perhaps the sense of meaninglessness is best captured by the biblical book of Ecclesiastes. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? Such a proclamation is a sad one. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. A sense of meaningless can occur at any time in our lives. Maybe it emerges after a crisis of disaster or perhaps a crisis of success. Tragedy and struggle can promote senses of failure or meaninglessness. Alternatively, many have achieved their aims only to wonder whether it was worth it. Still, for others, there is no single trigger. The sense of purposelessness slowly seeps into a life until it comes to lack the sense of purpose it once had. Regardless of how it begins, each of us experience this sense of anguish from time to time. Sometimes it takes on the character of total meaninglessness, the sense that nothing matters whatsoever and that this is painful. You can call that pessimistic nihilism, the view that nothing matters and that is bad. The problem with this view is that it doesn't make any sense. If nothing really matters, and there's no sense in which things can be good or bad. Indeed, the mere fact that nothing matters should no more promote a sense of sorrow than it should promote a sense of euphoria. If there are reasons to do anything, then we shouldn't be nihilists of this form. This form of pessimistic nihilism really doesn't make any sense. But there's another way to interpret this sense of existential angst. When many of us have a crisis of meaning, we know that things matter, but we are worried that our life doesn't align with the things that do in fact matter. This kind of crisis is born out of the sense that there must be something more. The Roman philosopher Seneca once said, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." It's a life without purpose and a suspicion that there is a destination we ought to be aiming at that may cause many a sense of suffering. Perhaps one is worried that one's on the path to a trivial life, that one is not surrounded by people with whom one has meaningful relationships with, or perhaps you're simply concerned that you are not who you could or should in some sense, be? Such concerns bring the question to the fore, what is it to live a good life? And that is the key question that so much philosophy, in particular ancient philosophy, focuses on. And it's a good thing that we ask this question from time to time, even if there are periods in life where we're very confident in particular answers. It's always useful to consider the concrete life of some person. Useful model here is Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. His meaning crisis, if you will, was brought on by the circumstances of life, by fortune. The crisis was a shipwreck. He was a wealthy merchant who lost all that he had in a storm. He was forced to return to the beginning with little sense of who he was or who he ought to be. Like many ancients who did not know what to do, he went to the Delphic oracle. The Delphic oracle said something like, to live the best life, one must converse with the dead. It must be said that the Delphic oracles were not known for their clarity. Wrestling with this message, Zeno returned to his ordinary affairs. One day he was walking throughout a bookshop and he saw Xenophon's Memorabilia. This is an account of the life of Socrates. This encounter with Socrates was a viewquake for him. It shaped how he saw the world. Perhaps he thought to himself, here is someone who lives well. Socrates was a true philosopher. And perhaps it was at this point that Zeno realized that the Delphic oracle meant that he should listen to the wise who came before him. Always a good thought. So Zeno became a philosopher. He went on to join an existing school and then found the school of Stoicism. Stoicism offers an account of a meaningful life, so to that extent, it is a balm for existential angst. It offers an answer to the question, how should I live? And it is one that has been applied by a plethora of people, from slaves to emperors. So how does Stoicism answer this issue of existential angst? One move to make here is that it doesn't. You do. What Stoicism does is provide the knowledge of how to live well and provide a map of how to do so. The map starts with a description of who we are. We are fundamentally rational and social beings. So living well must involve living rationally and living well with others. The Stoics express this mantra with the line, live according to nature. To say a little bit more about this, as rational beings, we are capable of pursuing knowledge. We can understand the world and what is good about it. This means developing our character into one that is geared towards knowledge. We should make this more concrete by considering the 4 cardinal virtues: justice, courage, self-discipline, and wisdom. Courage is knowing what to avoid. The brave act with prudence and avoid both cowardice and recklessness. Self-discipline is all about moderation, it's about knowing the right amount of things and striking the balance between asceticism and excess. Justice is about knowing how to treat others well, and wisdom is about knowing what is good and applying that knowledge. Because we are rational creatures, one of the most important things to get right is the quality of our thoughts, of our judgments. When we think correctly, we are more at home in the world and better able to handle what it throws at us. However, Stoicism isn't just about our judgments, it's also about our decisions. Once we know what is good and how to act, we must act that way. It's through our decisions that we express our virtue or vice. And by thinking and deciding well, we shape who we are. If we can shape ourselves into the best rational and social beings, someone who thinks well and treats others well, then we fulfill our function in some sense. That is what follows from our nature. Everything else is not as important, because nothing else is good without qualification. Wealth can be good, but success can lead to ruin. Pleasure can be good, but it can also lead to terrible decisions. Being highly regarded is often a sign of success, but it's not so valuable if people don't hold their reputation of you for the right reasons. The Stoics, and many others, of course, realize that it's not these things in themselves that matter so much, but how we use them. Living well means living virtuously. That's it. We can see the influence of Socrates on the Stoics here. Socrates was someone who honestly sought the truth. Indeed, he sacrificed himself for that pursuit. He did not claim to know what he did not. He was humble, yet stood by what he did know. And not only was he high-minded in the philosophical sense, but he was also a good friend. The Stoic view on meaning then is simple. It's through living virtuously that one answers the calling of nature, as it were. Zeno of Citium used this insight, one he found in a bookshop, to found a school that has influenced millions of people. He taught hundreds of students and was widely recognized for his virtue and wisdom. Whatever material success he had was donated to public funds. Perhaps he would not have had such meaningful success if he had always remained a rich merchant. From the little we know about him, by all accounts, he lived a life that was rich in both contemplation and action. And for that, one can thank the spur of a sense of angst and meaninglessness. If Zeno had not found himself lost after a shipwreck, he may never have become Zeno of Citium. Next time you find yourself in the grip of existential angst, remember that it can serve as a spur to return to thinking about what matters. One line on this is that to feel existential angst is to approach virtue. Thanks for listening. Please leave any comments or questions. Subscribe, and do check out our Stoa app for more content, meditations, and lessons.